KSL stations present an hour of truth for the battered but proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
All right, welcome to Radio Free New York. It's been a little while since I've been here in studio.
Yes.
So,
good to have you back.
Yeah. So to give you guys just a brief update, I had Kevin sit in on the show for me last week. I've got a family member who's been in the hospital, and I've been taking care of their house, their bills, medical paperwork, and of course, spending time visiting them. So I've been out, but here I am. I'm back. So thank you very much to Kevin, who was taking care of that for me, sitting in on the show. And I'm going to start off the show by saying I know probably just about everybody's talking about impeachment right now. It's definitely what people are talking about. I won't be talking about impeachment today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you were thinking, oh, no, I don't want to hear about that again, you're not going to hear about that on Radio Free New York, at least not today. Maybe Monday, maybe next Friday. You never know.
How about if we impeach Cuomo? We could talk about that.
Well, we could definitely talk about that just about any show. The number two thing people should probably be talking about, although I haven't seen or heard much about it, but I haven't been totally in tune with the media this last week, is the recent Democratic debate. And to be honest, I don't think they want anybody watching it, and I don't think they want anybody talking about it. So certainly impeachment's been dominating the news stream, and if you're on social media, Epstein is still dominating social media. So I won't be talking about that either. Now, as a libertarian, the thing I should probably be talking about today was actually the Libertarian presidential debate that happened last maybe 2 weekends ago now, right here in Olean, New York. I'm not in Olean, but in New York anyways. But I won't be talking about that either today. So what we are going to talk about today, and it's going to be definitely like one topic for probably the whole show, because I can't imagine even getting through everything I want to say about this topic, is education. And I've talked about education on a number of times, but what happened fairly recent, and this conversation came up because of a local issue. So those of you who are listening to the show locally, if you're in Monroe County or around there, you're going to be pretty familiar with what happened with the Rochester City School District. In fact, many of you are probably sitting there thinking, well, which thing? Because there's been a lot. But in discussing this with people online and people in the area, another topic came up that I think needs to be talked about. So what I'm first going to do is just dive right into what prompted this discussion. Give you guys some background, especially those of you outside the area. And if you're outside the area, bear with me a little bit, because some of this is going to be Monroe County related stuff, but then you'll see how it applies to you where you live. So for those of you who don't know, the city of Rochester, where I live, we have the Rochester City School District, and we have a $30 million deficit right now. They have overspent. Due to
overspending,
Yeah.
which, how does that happen?
Exactly. And that's the question. So this came up in an audit, although recently they said that the district knew about it before the audit, weeks and weeks before at the very least, if not sooner, and they were kind of, I don't know if they were trying to hide it, cover it up, whatever. And then this audit came out, and now everybody knows about it. And the issue here,
and it may not be 30 too, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure that 30 is just a nice round number for today, and I'm sure when the real number comes out, it'll probably be significantly more, and it won't be reported. That's kind of how the
They'll try to
media
hide
does
it
things. Yeah.
until hopefully some intrepid reporter uncovers what the real number is.
Yeah, and even then, they'll be on a different story, maybe some more news about impeachment or something. Which, you know, guys, I will say this about the impeachment thing. It is dominating the news cycle, and you should be looking at what else is happening. I think that is really, really important to say, hey, what am I missing when all this other stuff is going on? Because anytime something dominates the news cycle, it seems that you find out months and months later, oh, did you realize these 4 things got passed?
Yeah.
That you really should have known about. So that's just my advice to everybody. Pay close attention as all of this is happening. And I'm not saying ignore impeachment. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we're not talking about that today. So this $30 million deficit, this overspending of $30 million, to some people is a total shock. It's a total like, holy crap, what's going on with government? That's good if you feel that way. If you're like, wow, what is going on here? I'm sad to say this type of thing has been happening for a long time, but I'm glad to see people are starting to pay attention now. Because as somebody who has grown up in the city school district, the Rochester City School District, somebody who went through it themselves as a student, and somebody who lives there and pays those taxes, you know, I have some serious issues with how this organization has ran and its track record for success. And the district you live in may have similar issues. It just hasn't hit the news, or maybe you're in a good spot where that's not the case. But statistically speaking, New York State schools compare below the national average. So just know that as you're hearing this, you may think Rochester City School District's way worse than mine. Yours may still have these issues. It's just not making it on the news. So it's worth looking at. But from my perspective, and from the perspective of not just me, but some parents who have children in these schools, some teachers who have come to me in confidence. I've asked them to come on the radio. They're not comfortable with that because they still have a job, and they're hoping that they still have a job through all this. Here's what I've seen and what they've shared with me. They have failed to educate the children in the district. Now that's a broad, sweeping statement, but overall, the graduation rate is at about 53% right now. So just kind of think, yeah, they're over 50, but that doesn't include all of the students who have dropped out before graduation. Now, I saw conflicting numbers on that. Once you incorporate in the students who have dropped out, it goes down like much, much more, because if a child drops out, technically they didn't complete school, but they're not being counted in those numbers from my understanding. So if you added them in, it would go down like 28% or something like that, which is like abysmal, absolutely abysmal. So first issue, failed to educate. That's a big issue. They've also failed to take care of their teachers, the ones interacting with the students. And some people say, oh, well, they've got decent benefits or this or that. I'm not privy to everybody's benefits package, but I've yet to meet a teacher who says they're not personally buying supplies for their classroom. So, Yeah,
why is that? That's been going on for some time. And I picked up on this because, I had a younger one in grade school, and, right around the end of August, the memo would come out. We need glue sticks, and we need pens, we need pencils, we need highlighters, and it's like, where does the tax money go for?
Yeah. Things like tissue boxes, which tissue boxes you could almost say is like a personal hygiene thing. Whether or not the school would or wouldn't supply that is a question. But
I don't think they want 18 boxes.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen people ask for paper, and all sorts of things. It's like a school doesn't have paper. So these sort of things are putting the teachers in a situation where they don't even have the tools to conduct education in the classroom. That to me is failure on the district's end to take care of the teachers that they're employing. I mean, could you imagine, say you work at a pizza shop, and you show up to work and you have to call up the customers and say, hey, could you drop off some mozzarella cheese before you place your order? Because, could you bring that
some
in?
Flour.
Yeah, we need some flour. We need some yeast. You wouldn't shop there. You'd wonder what is going on with management there. So that's just, man, it's not good. It's not a good look. So, guys, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a few other issues that I've seen, and then talk about the difference between a government-ran school and a public school. We'll talk about that and more on Radio Free New York.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A reminder from Abate.
Coming back.
American bikers aim toward education. Distracted driving is dangerous, so pull over and eat. Don't try to read your mail and newspaper, and stay off your cell phone. Make a mental note to be more alert, making it a habit to expect the unexpected. Remember to look twice. Save a life. Train yourself to watch for motorcycles which are harder to see. Join Abate, and your family will be protected with a free $4,000 accident policy. Ride safe. Ride free. Ride often. Abate. If you ride with us. Google Abate, Monroe County.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
All right, we are back here on Radio Free New York. We are not talking about impeachment. I know everybody else is. It's not what we're doing today. But we are live here in the WYSL studio. And if you guys want to participate in the discussion, I see some of you are commenting in on Facebook already. Welcome to the show, Dan and Jake. If you guys have questions or comments, please comment in on the YouTube stream or the Facebook stream. You can always call into the WYSL station at 585-346-3000. Would be happy to take your calls and your comments. So I'm just talking about some of the issues I have as a taxpayer in the city school district, the Rochester City School District specifically. Those issues I started to address, which are failing to educate children, failing to take care of their staff, their teachers. I really feel that they've failed to support their students throughout education, and part of that has to do with top-down mandates. A failure to graduate children at an acceptable rate. So the graduation rate right now is about 53%. That's the most accurate number I've seen so far, the most up-to-date number. It may change a little bit, but that to me is unacceptable. Based on the grade that the district uses and the rubric they use to grade students, that's an F. You can't get any lower than an F. So based on their own standards, they are failing. They've failed to keep children in school. We have a tremendously high dropout rate, and they've failed to stay within their budget. So those are the things that I've seen as failures. And then, things that are other failures, but you might say, well, they succeeded in doing this. Yeah, they succeeded in a $30 million overspend, which to me is a failure. I think it was about 5 years ago, they had a similar issue where there was a $50 million issue. They didn't know where the money was or what accounts it was spent on.
I think that was just a shortfall, though. I think that they had budgeted and they looked at the available money, and they had to go to they had to go with their hand out to Albany, which is that's a repeat performance that was happening fairly regularly. This is Yeah, we spent $30 million more in the last few weeks than we really should have.
Yeah. That's not good.
I mean, that doesn't. I mean, what?
Yeah, and just
are there no financial controls?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: $30 million spread across 30,000 students. You know that we're not talking about a small amount of money here. They have $1 billion budget that gets rubber stamped by city council, which is all under single party rule, straight Democrat. There is nobody there to speak up and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be voting yes on this budget. Maybe we should actually be doing our due diligence for the taxpayers. Nope, it just goes right through. A few other things that I think are worth noting about this situation. We already spend more than $10,000 per student per year above the national average. So I'm not talking about $10,000 per student per year. No, the average is closer to $22,000 per student per year. So we're spending $10,000 more is what we're spending. That's terrible. And what do we get out of the school board? We get them fighting with each other on emails that, to be honest, should not have been made public, like for any organization. And they basically say, oh, we're embarrassed. We should be doing better. That's all you get. To me, these are serious issues. The other issue is this school board for the Rochester City School District is the highest paid in the state, and they make 200 to 600% more than other school boards across the state.
Yikes.
Is for the lowest performing district in the nation. So you have to ask yourself, how did we get there? And how do we address those issues? That's not a track record I think anybody should be running on. But the problem is what happens in the city, and we see this all over, not just the city, but we see it in New York State, and we see it across the nation.
Yeah, our problem's a matter of degree. It's not dissimilar from the problems in other districts elsewhere. And it's all, I mean, not to jump the gun on you here, but it's all largely due to this top-down approach on education.
Yeah, so that's one of the huge issues is, mandates from Albany overreaching. Another issue I see here that people sometimes they want to avoid it, especially if their team is elected into office, but single party rule is an issue too. When you're in a group and you're in a room and you're trying to make progress, you're trying to fix an issue, one of the worst possible things that you could have is that all of you in the room agree. Because when everybody in the room agrees and you're not making progress, chances are really, really good. You need some people with fresh ideas. You need somebody to argue with you and fight with you and not just a friend who says, hey, I want to play devil's advocate. No, you want somebody in the room who truly their heart and their soul disagrees with you fundamentally to give you that different perspective. In the RCSD case, that's not a situation that they have. In Rochester and I think across the state, the Democrats have this vote A all the way campaign. Their campaign to convince you to vote straight across the Democrat line without any knowing of who these people are, just trust us, we'll get you there type thing. And don't get me wrong, Republicans do it too, conservatives do it too. Everybody's trying to push their party line. And voting straight party line gets you in this type of trouble. When you don't know who you're electing, you're just assuming that the party did the right thing. So, people started asking me, they said, okay, we agree with you. This is a bad situation. We're spending too much. Kids aren't getting educated. Teachers aren't being treated right. This top-down approach is bad. But how do we fix this complex, broken system? And I'm going to give you guys a really simple thing. I think most of the suburbs have already done this. And when they did this, they saw their education systems getting better. It's a really simple thing. You make the ballots nonpartisan. So when you're voting for your school board, you're voting for a commissioner, whatever, there's no party name associated with it. You see a list of names. You don't know what party they're affiliated with. You now have to figure out who is going to be right for my children, who is going to actually be right for my my tax dollars, my budget, my wallet. Who's going to abuse it the least, but still give the education that I think my children should have? So that is a very simple thing. That is step one. And I believe that a lot of the suburbs have already implemented this and saw good results. So the city should look at this, because what's happening in the city is vote A all the way with a promise of something, or maybe a promise of nothing. And people are just doing that blindly without knowing what qualifications are. They're doing it without having any idea of what these people think they can do to change education. It's a bad situation. And I know some of you are thinking, you know what we need? We need some Republicans in there. I'm sure that that's what people are thinking. And I would say, if you know the city of Rochester, if you're from this area, you know that the Republicans are not going to fix it. Because if you've lived in the city, you know that the Republican Party is basically extinct there. It's non-existent. They have only had a handful of city candidates in the last few decades, and only one win in that time. And the only reason they had that win was because that district overlapped with suburban districts. So don't sit here and think that, oh, we're going to change it with the Republican Party or the Conservative Party or this or that. No, you're going to need to change it by going nonpartisan ballots. Step one. And I actually have kind of a little side note here. The Libertarian Party is starting to make more headway in Democratic districts than Republicans, because right now it's either for or against Trump. That's what everybody's running on in local districts. And people don't want to play that game. They actually want to know, what are you going to do? And so in these larger, heavily Democrat districts, this isn't the case in red districts right now. This is blue districts. People are starting to consider voting Libertarian because it has nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with local politics. And to me, that's actually not the right reason to go that way. I wish you would go that way for other reasons.
But you'll take it.
But yeah, we'll take it. Show you how good we are at running government, and then maybe next time you'll make that choice for different reasons. So that was kind of a little side note, but this is why I want to emphasize. And I know we've got like some big presidential elections coming up, and I know it's not going to get any better. In fact, it's going to get way worse, because you guys are going to have Thanksgiving next week, and you're going to have Christmas a few weeks after that, and New Year's Day. And I tell you what's going to happen at the dinner table. People aren't going to be talking about, hey, how do we balance the school budget and get education right? Or, how do we help the water authority, clean the water but stay smaller so government doesn't get too big? Those aren't the conversations that are going to happen at the dinner table. The conversations are going to be families arguing over impeachment, more than likely, and healthcare. And, that's basically going to be it. And as you look at local elections, those things are, that's not what those local elections are for. So I say all of that to get into the heart of the topic that we're going to discuss for the rest of the show, which is the difference between government schools and public schools. And I really, really want to make that differentiation known to you guys, because I did have a teacher who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, that was asking some good questions. And one of the things that they brought up in their own way was that they don't think that there would be any type of successful model where you take away public schools and replace them with private schools. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I think there's a lot of people that could never envision an America without a public education system. And so I'm not disputing that. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is what we have today is not a public education system. We do not have public schools. What we have is a government education system and government schools. And when we come back from our break, I'm going to explain to you guys how I see the differences, what those look like, and maybe how we can get there. So we'll be back in a moment on Radio Free New York.
listening to the voice of liberty. WYSL. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Aircraft Environmental Systems proudly supports Radio Free New York. Rochester-based leaders in climate simulation chambers for America's R&D laboratories. We're experts in troubleshooting, calibrations, custom designs, and consulting for more than 40 years. Industry pioneers, we created the first ever fleet of temperature, humidity, and altitude test chambers available to rent coast to coast. Trained and trusted by environmental chamber manufacturers, we are ACES. Find us at acesinc.com.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Radio Free New York on WYSL, AM 1040, FM 92.1, and FM 95.5 West.
All right, we are back here on Radio Free New York. We're talking about education and talking about the topic in, I think, a little different light. One of the things that I hear often, and I usually hear this from people who are very concerned about education. They are very concerned about education, especially in inner city schools, what they would call underprivileged students. They say that, they'll take private schools and charter schools, and they will pit those against what they call public schools and try to say that a private school and a charter school hurts people who are poor. It hurts poor young students. It hurts minority students, students that live in inner cities. And they'll often take that approach that private schools are bad and charter schools are bad. And it's just there to hurt public education. Sometimes they'll make it a matter of privilege, whether that's wealth privilege, white privilege, whatever they want to call it. And that's how they see it. And what I would say is I can understand where they're coming from a financial standpoint. I can understand where people would think that, if you eliminated public schooling and families couldn't afford, whether they were middle class or poor or anything in between, if only the wealthy could afford to send their children to school, that there would be a education gap based on your family's financial status. So I understand that argument, and I want to just get out in front of that before we start this discussion, because I want those of you who feel that way to know that I've heard you, and I've heard your concerns, and I actually think those are legitimate concerns. So when we talk about this topic, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not ignoring those concerns. I've thought through those concerns, and I'm not talking about eliminating public education today. Instead, what I'm talking about is shifting from government education to public education. And I'll tell you how I see these things differently, what we have today versus what maybe someday we could have in the future. So today we have what I would call government schools and government education. That means that government is in charge of the regulations with your school. That means they choose how you pass and how you fail. They choose how the teachers can and cannot educate the children. They choose how a child is graded, what type of assignments, what curriculum is chosen. They choose how flexible or inflexible this is. It's a very top-down central approach mandated by Albany, which is really controlled by New York City. And to put that in perspective, I think it's really important to mention that New York City, for many people in New York State, is further away than Washington, D.C. So think about that. You are closer to many places in Pennsylvania. You're closer to places in New Jersey and other states, way closer to other state capitals than we are to New York City, closer. So these people that live that far away are making decisions for you as to how your child will be educated, and you have literally no say in those people's elections at all.
And the remoteness of government from, the point of use. In other words, the farther government is away from you, the greater the opportunity for corruption.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you have a situation, and all of us have today, a situation where people live hundreds and hundreds of miles away from us. They're not in our district. We do not have the opportunity to vote them in or out, but they are the ones voting on and creating this path to education for your children. That's why I call these government schools, not public schools. And I would pose this question to any of you. I would ask you, how does that person know how your child learns? How does that person know what your child is interested in? How does that person know how your child engages in school and what topics are good for them, and if they're good at math and science, or if they're better with creative things like art and, other things like that? The answer is they don't. The two people who know that the best are the parent and the teacher, and those are the people getting cut out of education. That to me is a serious, serious issue. And, on this show, we've spoken with judges, we've spoken with district attorneys and assistant district attorneys and other elected officials. And many times they talk about how in Albany, government is taking away discretion, whether that's discretion from the judges, from the district attorneys, or the police, or anybody else,
or just the planning of the curriculum. Just the accountability is gone. Mm-hmm. The texts are mandated by either a federal or state board of education, Department of Education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's exactly where I'm going. Is
how we got Common Core.
Yeah. So what's happening is, our state government, and it's not just in New York State, you'll see this happening in other states, state government is saying, hey, judge, I know better than you. Hey, officer, I know better than you. Hey, DA, I know better than you. Hey, teacher, I know better than you. Hey, parent, I know better than you. That's what we're getting out of this top-down centralized approach, and not just education, but criminal justice and everywhere, around. So what we have in government education is government telling you how your child will be educated, what they'll be educated on, and what is best for your child without your input or say. So that is what we have today. We don't have public schools. We have government schools. So now I want to shift this conversation to, well, if that's what we have, if what we have is government schools, what could public education be? Like, if we actually gave education to the public, and what does that look like? How could it be? Andrew, wow, this sounds weird because I always thought we had public education. First and foremost, it would be schools owned by the community. So your child goes to school, you have ownership in that school. And I think that another thing to say is the students should have ownership as well. And I know that for some people that may sound radical. That might sound like, what? The kids, they can't make decisions. They're there to learn. Why would we give them decisions in their education? Because that's how you become a person that functions in society. Right now, we have so many children, they're just learning how to make their first ever decisions at age 26 and 30, and they're failing. They're moving into their parents' basements. They are, having children when they can't take care of themselves, and they're deep, deep in debt. They have a lot of problems. And it's because we have taken away their ability to make decisions from a young age. We haven't allowed them to do that. They develop anxiety because of it. And then here we are where society's in a bad, bad situation. So yeah, I think that the kids from whatever age that school deems necessary, once again, not a top-down approach, not government's choice, instead the community's choice who's running this school, they choose at what time is appropriate for the kids to have a say in their education. And I'm not saying that the kids get to choose when school ends, but maybe you give them a voice and you let them vote on, is it 3 o'clock or is it 5 o'clock? Maybe they get to vote on, does school start at, 9 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock? Maybe the adults decide, nope, kids don't have a say in that. But you come up with this concept, you come up with this idea that the students start to get to take part in their education and have say. Now, I know you guys are thinking, well, who would be in charge of this? How's this work? My guess is it would be set up like a nonprofit structure where, you have a board and members. The board and members could be made up of the students and the parents. I don't know that it would be right for the teachers to be able to participate in that way. They could, clearly have representation, but I think that for it to be publicly owned, it should be whomever is paying taxes on that, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. But the direct stakeholders, so the students and their parents. Now, I know some people are thinking, okay, Andrew, wow, we're talking about giving the community their school. This sounds radical. No, this sounds like public education. This sounds like what it was meant to be. And so let's talk about funding for a second. Let's talk about how public funding would happen for these public schools. Well, if your child goes to that school, you can have your education tax dollars that you're paying go to that school. Wow, it's like almost exactly what's happening now. Very simple. Now, some of you guys are thinking, wait, but what does that do, in terms of what if there isn't enough funds? What if there isn't enough staff? Well, like any nonprofit, you can still have involved community activists, volunteers, people who can contribute in any way they want to. You still have parents who are involved. In fact, I think parents would become much more involved because they have ownership in this. Their children are going to the school and you now have a say. So now the teachers now the parents can say, hey, this is our school. I want my child to learn this. And enough parents get together and say, yeah, you know what? That's right. Our children, they don't need Common Core. Guess what? Any of these schools, true public schools, will vote away Common Core. It will not exist. I can almost totally guarantee it. Maybe there'll be one Common Core school, but Common Core would go away. And you know what type of things would start coming back? Things like home ec. Home ec would definitely come back. And you know what else they would add into it? They would add in things like financial wellness classes and classes on how to get a mortgage and how to improve your credit score. Education would change from focusing on standardized testing.
How to unclog a drain.
Yeah.
How to plunge a toilet. How to change a tire.
Easy. Balance a budget.
You talk to folks at the bank. Of course, we go to the bank every day here. And They talk about young people that go to the ATM and they think that they look at the balance that's displayed on the screen. They think that's what's actually in their account.
Yeah.
At any given moment, they understand that that's a moving target.
Yeah. No, it's true. Actually, I had a conversation with somebody just the other day. I won't say who it was, but a younger person. And they were explaining to me how they didn't understand how their bank account worked, because they would pay bills with their card, and those bills would come out at different times from when they deposited money. And they're like, I don't understand. I paid this last week, but didn't show up till today, and I bounced my account because I put money in last week, and they don't understand that sometimes it takes a couple days to process. So yeah, it's a big issue. We're going to talk about this a little bit more, guys. We're going to take a break here on Radio Free New York.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovation should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Fiorella, a family-owned farm-to-table Italian restaurant with casual atmosphere at the newly renovated Rochester Public Market. Fiorella offers wood-fired, old-world-style pizza with naturally leavened dough, house-made fresh pasta, desserts, and gelato. Enjoy craft beers, imported Italian and New York State wines. Open Wednesday through Saturday for lunch and dinner. Wednesday evenings enjoy no corkage fee. And Thursday is gnocchi night. Call 434-5705 for reservations. View the menu on the web. restaurantfiorella.com.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their
latest spot
customized solution, or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
We're talking edumacation today with libertarian Andrew Hollister.
Yep. And speaking of libertarians, I actually just got a message from Chase Koch, which you guys may or may not remember. She was on the show a couple of weeks ago. She was running for Orleans County Ledge.
Yeah.
And she actually took the highest percentage of votes any libertarian candidates have gotten in that county.
What percentage is that?
I think it was like 13.4 or 13.8% in a pretty heavily partisan race. So that was pretty cool. Definitely a huge shout out to her. Good job. I hope she keeps going. So yeah, we're talking about education here. We're talking about the difference between government schools and public schools. And if you guys missed the beginning, I don't have enough time to re-explain it. You'll have to grab the podcast on YouTube, search Andrew C. Hollister, pull up this podcast here, and you can hear the beginning part. So in talking about this, one of the things we're talking about is cutting government out of regulation, right? Which means Board of Regents would essentially have no say because it's all local say. The parents have say and the students have say, and the teachers actually have power to say things like, hey, I think your student would learn best this way. And the parent has the power to say, yes, teach my child that way. That's what this could look like. It doesn't look like that today, but that's what it could look like.
That's the world I grew up in. The local school board, with some broad mandate from the state, there was no federal education department then, came up with the standards, and everything was set by the Board of Regents, which was a very high standard. And at the time, New York State had really good schools.
Yeah. And you learned how to read and write, right? And you can add and all that. Yeah. So this whole idea of this top-down, federal mandate and state mandate approach,
with all this indoctrination in the mix, too.
Yeah.
All the social engineering and tinkering.
Yeah. So people got educated, and pretty well, I'd like to say, before all of this existed. So we don't need that today. But some of you are probably wondering, well, wait, how do I know what standard of education my children will get? How do I know how they're going to compete? And of course, I say, well, the key word is standard, right? Instead of having a regulatory pass-fail, a regulatory mandate in terms of curriculum, you can create standards. So Board of Regents, I envision they would create a standard that schools can choose to adopt or not. And communities can build standards, and various industries can build standards. And the schools can choose which standards to adopt and abide by. And when you go and you say, okay, what school do I want to send my kid to? You could look, and if Regents was really important to you, you would look at only schools that follow the Regent standards. Say college prep was really important to you. You would look for schools that followed a standard modeled after college prep. Maybe your kid is an athlete, and you think that they're going to go to school and that's what they're really good at. You would look to schools that follow standards for the NFL or the NBA or whatever it is that you think would be right for your child. And if those decisions change, then year by year, you may choose to move your kid to a different school. No different than how it works today. And I know some districts are really small and they might only have one school. That's not the case in the city school district, and that's certainly in metropolitan areas. There are many, many schools. But the nice thing is, with local control, with public ownership of the school, where you as the parent actually have say, it doesn't matter, because if you're in a rural, smaller area, you just tailor the school to what's right for your kid. So it gives you say. Now, I know the other question is, okay, so what about funding? And everybody's thinking right now, hey, Andrew's a libertarian. Andrew doesn't like taxes. He probably doesn't want people publicly funding the schools. How are you going to approach this? And my answer is this. If your child is going to school, you're paying school tax. Now, whether or not people who don't have children in school pay school tax or not, that's a discussion for a different day. But think of it this way. If you as the parent and the child are now in charge of the school and in charge of the budget, and that's what you're voting on, you're also voting on your school taxes. You now have say, because you get to control the budget in the school. So if you want your school taxes to go down and the other parents agree that you guys want that and that you can do it, you just lower your education budget, and therefore you're lowering your school tax. So I'm very much a fan of volunteerism, and I believe that if you decide that taxes are right for you and that you want to pay them and you want to raise your own taxes or lower your own taxes, then you should have the right to vote for that. And I think moving to this model where, what we have today, people call public education, but we don't. We have government education. If you move to public education, where you as the parent are the owner and steward of your child's education, and you are essentially a member or a board member of that school, which is a nonprofit, not government ran, you now have the ability to change your tax budget, change your school budget, and vote if you want to increase or decrease your taxes. And I think that most libertarians would be on board with that. And I think many parents would be too, especially when they saw the success of others. Would people move to this overnight? No. And, I might be a little cynical here, but the reason is because it actually gives them responsibility. Right now, it's really, really easy to say, oh, somebody else's problem, not mine.
Well, another cop out that you get is, well, the budget is all spent. We basically control 2% of the budget.
Well, for education, that's kind of true and kind of not true, right? If you have this top-down approach that we have today, absolutely, where Albany says this is Regents and you will follow it, and this is Common Core and you will follow it, and you must do these things. But if you shifted to the parents being in charge and Albany having no say, Albany just puts forth one or two standards like, hey, this is what we think you should follow, and now the parents are in charge. Well, if they don't want to follow that budget, they don't want to follow that standard, they don't have to.
But then you got that great big building full of educrats in Albany. What are you going to do with them? They're all going to have to become Walmart greeters or something.
Yeah, we might be able to save some tax dollars there too, Bob.
I'm all for that.
Yep. And here's the thing. I know a lot of people, when they hear the idea of improving the education system, for some reason, they always feel like that means firing teachers and people losing their jobs. And I'm not saying if that is or isn't true. I think there are many models where that is true. I think there's also many models where it's not true. I think that if you're thinking about that, you got to question, is that going to be your focus? I think that the focus should be better education for children and parents having a say in their education, and us making government smaller in the process and making education better in the process. If that means, that we need to consider jobs that may or may not exist anymore, I suspect that we're going to find the jobs that may or may not exist anymore are going to be top-level exec jobs, administrative jobs, the people who are doing not so good budgeting today, which is why there's a $30 million deficit. Those jobs, those jobs are probably in trouble. And I'm sad to say it, but the way New York State is, I'm sure they'll find a job in somebody's administration. So I think that the focus has really got to be on education, getting government smaller, giving the public their schools back, allowing them to make decisions on how education would be. And I'll give you guys like a cool little thing for those of you who homeschool and you're like, Andrew, you talk about education. What about us? I think this model could apply to homeschool just as easily. The homeschool groups and communities could put together what they say is their school. And listen, you're making the standards. So maybe your school only does gym class, chemistry, and physics, the things that are hard for you to teach at home. And the rest of the curriculum you do from home is normal. I mean, that's an option. That's the beautiful thing about actually creating a situation where you, the community, have say in your school. You, the community, actually own the school. And for homeschoolers, you could have a really small budget and you could reduce your school taxes if you did that. Whereas other people who don't have the ability to homeschool, they're going to have a higher budget. It's still probably going to be a lot less than what they're paying now, but that's
absolutely
it's a different situation. Because when you're actually in charge of spending dollars and cents and you see what you're spending every single month and year, I think the parents will scrutinize those costs.
Yeah, you won't be hiring 15 diversity officers at $150,000 a year each.
Yeah, well, and not for nothing, but people coupon and stuff at home. I'm amazed. Some of my friends, I've got friends who are like stay-at-home moms, and they are so great at shopping, it blows my mind. I'm like, what do you mean the Superstore paid you $25 to go shopping? Imagine if you took that type of ingenuity and allowed those people to work on budgeting for schools and do some of the school shopping. You wouldn't see line items like a hammer for $900 and a coffee cup for $200. You would see much better efficiency, and I think a way better quality education. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on Radio Free New York. I will be back with you on Monday.